Hello everyone in Tauranga. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate it. As Betty's middle daughter, I'm honoured to share some reflections about my mother, Betty Doherty, a woman I love deeply and respect. My mother was a dignified and thoughtful person. She wasn't a flake. She stood rock solid throughout her life, with values of love and loyalty for family and friends always at the fore. She was intelligent and well-informed right up to the end, where she could offer an opinion on any current event, whether local, national, or international. She loved travelling, and highlights for her were her trips to England, Europe, and China, where she showed herself to be a proficient and capable traveller. She was a kind, sweet, and unfailingly polite, but also unshakable and steadfast person. She hated to see any family member suffer, but on the other hand was not sentimental and taught us all to be resilient and be capable of looking after ourselves. Over her lifetime, she watched her 5 children grow into adults with their various successes and failures. She stayed loyal and true, never giving up on any of us, even when as adults we may have been less than perfect, much as this is hard to believe, I know. She didn't hold grudges with any of us. We knew the relationship we had was strong enough to handle differences. We never doubted Mum's steadfast love for us, even in our most antagonistic moments. I have many wonderful memories of my mother, but to be honest, the best are with just the 2 of us together, doing simple stuff, like going on drives and in the countryside around Tauranga, where she showed me places she had lived, and the dance hall that she and Dad used to go when they were first dating. She loved dancing, while Dad loved drinking beer with the boys down at the end of the hall naturally. And this was how their courtship went. As Mum recently said, we make such big life-changing decisions without thoughts of what the future might be. I can definitely relate to that, and like my mother, I would not change any of it, even if I could. On these outings, Mum and I would buy bags of oranges and vegetables from the orchard stands and chat about things. This was a way of getting to know her, as she was always fairly reluctant to talk directly about her personal thoughts and feelings. As a teenager and young woman, I was especially curious to know her more and learn what made her tick, beyond that of the role of mother. What was she like as a young woman? However, asking questions about her earlier life made her feel uncomfortable for some reason which I never figured out. Mum would always say, "Oh, I'm just ordinary. There's nothing special about me, you know." Of course, when I was young, this struck me as incredibly unsatisfying and untrue. But with age, I realized that delving into her innermost being was simply not as interesting to her as it was to me. And so I let it rest and learnt not to pry and just to be with her. Our relationship over the years evolved to a more relaxed and open one, when she could tell me, "Isn't it time for your walk, Annette?" when I started to get on her nerves by musing on subjects she wished not to talk about. Within her marriage to Trevor, Betty was a paragon of love and loyalty, and like so many women of that generation, learnt to put her own needs secondary to that of her husband's. She loved the social activity of the household that my father created, but in my opinion, came to enjoy the solitude and autonomy of widowhood even more. She grew into the role of matriarch of the family, and over the years created her own family traditions. She proudly attended our weddings and cried with our divorces. She rejoiced when our grandchildren and great-grandchildren were born. She remembered birthdays and important events. She was the central hub of our family. For me, all the news of the extended family came through her and my regular phone conversations. So much so that I often did not feel the need to call others individually. Sadly, this will no longer be the case. I am already missing these conversations, and so my siblings can now expect calls from me. "Ross, you are on that list. Expect a call soon." Indeed, home and family were what was most important to Mum. She created and maintained her beautiful home on Fifth Avenue East, with its tranquil beach setting and spacious rooms. And this is where she wished to stay until she died. She refused to even entertain the idea of going anywhere else, and so with the help of her family, caring neighbours and caregivers, she was able to stay at home and yet feel safe and looked after. There she could listen to her favourite radio and television programs in peace and have the privacy and solitude which she so valued. There she could have family members visit her or stay, enjoying the fun of children and their big family dinners, and then the return to quiet again after all had left. There she could just walk across the property and have her hair set each week by her favourite hairdresser, who never failed to please. I would say that Betty always presented herself well with her lovely outfits and jewellery that made her look so attractive. Sure, there were lonely times for Mum, but overall the days were filled, whether it be by phone call, radio and TV shows, listening to music, or visits by people. In the last year, she particularly enjoyed having Edna as her caregiver. For a couple of hours each day, Edna entertained her with interesting stories, all the while caring for her tenderly and creating order in the household. One of the disadvantages of living to 89 was that she outlived many of her dear friends, such as Irma Williams, Kit Wilson, and Helen Cochran, and she missed them terribly. Then, in 2017, losing Linley, her beloved daughter, so soon, was also an unexpected, though expected, blow. Her grief was mostly private, but I know there was an aching loss. I felt it when I returned there for a visit in 2018. It was palpable. During the last years of her life, Betty was understandably frustrated and saddened with the loss of her vision, and with her world growing steadily dimmer. Heroic efforts were made a year ago, as many will recall, to save her vision by placing eye drops in her eyes around the clock. However, these efforts were ultimately unsuccessful and her vision worsened, so that she could barely see. Then, over the last few months, Betty grew tired with her life and its limitations. As her body lost its strength, her breath became harder to catch, and her appetite diminished to the point where only sweet desserts tasted good. But nevertheless, her spirits would lift whenever a visitor called. She loved to hear stories from others. She always appreciated visits from her siblings, Noel and Merle, and she stayed close to Pam Hilford, her beloved sister-in-law, by phone right up until the end. This past year, Mum needed more help than ever, even though she hated being dependent on others. Those that came to the fore to help are my younger sister Helen, brother Ross, and grandchild Caitlin. Helen once said to me, "If she needs me, I am there. I will drop everything in a minute. There is no question." And indeed, Helen showed that to be true right up to the end, when she was with her in the hospital, giving comfort as Mum's life neared the end. Helen spoke gently and firmly to her, as only a daughter can do, saying, "Close your eyes, Mother. Everything's okay now." That evening, Helen called Ross to come quickly, as Mum was fading fast. However, it was evening time, and the unattended locked hospital doors presented somewhat of a barrier. I would like a copy of the hospital's closed-circuit video from that evening that might show Ross shaking his fists and swearing repeatedly at the front door of the hospital, trying to get them to open. All the while, Helen speaking to him on his phone, saying calmly, "Press the button, Ross. Press the button." This was one situation where Ross could not intimidate the door into complying with his will. At any event, he finally got in and made it to the ward so that both he and Helen could be there with Mum as she peacefully took her last breath just moments later. Speaking of Ross, he was there every Saturday at Mum's place, regular as clockwork, with her morning latte and muffin before he went off to play golf. Mum looked forward to these visits and loved the treats he brought with him. Caitlin could also be counted on to be there at times, helping with chores and occasionally getting Mum to her appointments. I know how much appreciated having this help at hand when she needed it. She would sometimes lament how not one of her daughters lived in town. But on the other hand, we as her daughters knew she did not want any of us to change our lives and come live with her. But she never wanted to be a burden to any of us. But the irony was not lost on us when we recalled how dutifully she was there for her own mother right up until Dorrie's death at age 99. As her daughter, I feel sadness and regret for not being able to care more for her at the end of her life. But I know that overall, she had the perfect help when she needed it. Having Helen and Ross stepping in when needed was a godsend, and for that I am forever grateful. Thank you both. Interestingly, in conversations with Betty this year, one theme I heard was her longing for her late parents, Alec and Dorrie Hilford. When she had a fall at home over Christmas, it was her father that she called out for. She saw her parents as nurturers and protectors, and that is how I think we, as her family, view her. For this, our mother, Betty Doherty, will live on in our hearts forever, just like her parents did for her, giving us a feeling of sustenance, love, and protection, an internal state that will not be diminished by her death, and one that hopefully can be passed on to our own children and in turn to their children. Thank you, everyone. Our family appreciates the attendance of each and every one here today, and I'd just like to end with a poem by the Irish poet John O'Donoghue. It's called A Blessing for Death. I pray that you will have the blessing of being consoled and sure about your own death. May you know in your soul that there is no need to be afraid. When your time comes, may you be given every blessing and shelter that you need. May there be a beautiful welcome for you in the home that you are going to. You are not going somewhere strange. You are going back to the home that you never left. When you come to die, may it be after a long life. May you be peaceful and happy and in the presence of those who really care for you. May your going be sheltered and your welcome assured. May your soul smile in the embrace of eternity. Thank you. Take care.